A millionaire discovers his daughter secretly helping a poor boy who, shockingly, resembles his long-lost brother. Christopher Lindsay stood still at the window of his office on the 50th floor of Lindsay's Tower, gripping a weathered photograph carefully torn in half. Reflected in the glass, his face blended with Manhattan's dazzling skyline, a city of power and prosperity. His phone vibrated, signaling yet another acquisition wrapped up. At the same time, a call came in from his daughter Evelyn's school about her third unexplained absence this month. As he turned the photograph over, his eyes caught sight of a faded inscription. Brothers Forever, 1998. The side with Thomas's face was missing, like his brother himself. Before we dive into the story, leave a comment below with where you're tuning in from today. The autumn wind gusted through the narrow alleys of the Lower East Side as Christopher Lindsay, dressed in a simple dark coat and baseball cap, discreetly tailed his daughter at a distance. Quick, anxious glances and hasty steps took the place of Evelyn's customary confident stride. Each block took them farther from their world of luxury and deeper into a part of the city Christopher hadn't set foot in for years. Evelyn clutched a large backpack, a habit she'd developed 3 times a week over the past month. Christopher's private investigator had reported her comings and goings, but witnessing it himself sent a chill through him. His 15-year-old daughter venturing into one of the city's roughest areas. What could drive her to take such risks? The answer appeared as Evelyn entered a small, worn-down community park. Seated on a weathered bench was a boy, about 12 years old. His clothes were neat but worn, and his slight frame held a quiet dignity. As Evelyn approached, the boy's face broke into a smile that made Christopher freeze. That smile. It was his brother Thomas's smile, the one captured in countless photos from their youth, the same smile that haunted Christopher for 25 years. The boy looked just like Thomas at that age, down to the small dimple in his left cheek and the way his eyes crinkled at the corners. "I brought you some new books." Evelyn's voice floated across the park. "And Mom's old laptop, the one I mentioned." Dad never pays attention to what's tucked away in the storage room anyway. According to the investigator's notes, young Jesse accepted the gifts with a poise far beyond his years. "You don't need to risk trouble, Evelyn." "Your dad," he began. "My dad," Evelyn interjected, "has more than he'll ever need. He just doesn't get that some things are worth more than money." Christopher's fists tightened instinctively. Her words stung, mirroring an old conversation from years back in this very neighborhood. Thomas's parting words, "You've lost sight of what really matters, Chris. That's why I can't stay." The memories swept over him, blurring his vision. The heated clash with their father over the brutal takeover of Wright Manufacturing. Thomas's principled stand against the inevitable layoffs. Christopher's silence as their father forced him to pick a side. The sound of the door slamming still haunted him. "Grandma's getting better." Jesse's voice broke through, pulling Christopher back to the present. "The medicine you helped us get, I can't thank you enough." Evelyn smiled, handing out sandwiches from her bag. "Just keep nailing those tests," she replied. "You're going to get that scholarship, Jesse. I'm sure of it," Christopher observed as they shared their modest meal, their conversation effortlessly flowing between studies and playful jokes. Here, his usually reserved daughter laughed openly, and Jesse's sharp mind sparkled as they debated topics like literature and math. It reminded Christopher painfully of the spirited talks he'd once shared with Thomas. Suddenly, an elderly woman's voice called out from a nearby apartment window, "Jesse, time for your shift." He carefully gathered his books. "Thanks again, Evelyn. Same time, Thursday." As he took off, Christopher noticed Evelyn's face shift, the carefree girl now replaced by someone older, with a worried look. She glanced at her phone, checked the time, and quickly set off, Chris headed toward her after-school activities cover story. Christopher stayed rooted in place, his mind racing. The investigator's report lay heavily in his pocket, filled with hard facts. Jesse Chang, age 12, orphaned 2 years ago. Father killed in a cab accident. Mother died in childbirth. Lives with his grandmother, a former elementary school teacher who is now very ill. Straight-A student in public school, holding multiple academic awards despite his hardships. But no report could capture or predict that warm, hopeful smile. Christopher's thoughts raced as he looked at the young boy, seeing in him an unmistakable reflection of his brother Thomas. The absurdity of running into him here, in the very place Thomas had last been seen, was staggering. Could it even be a coincidence? With his hand hovering over his phone, Christopher considered calling his lawyer. One quick call, one DNA test, and he'd know for sure. It could change everything. Yet, he recalled Thomas's words. Some things matter more than money. What would a test really achieve? Just prove how deeply he'd let his brother down. While he'd been chasing wealth, Thomas had struggled along as a cab driver, ultimately passing away alone, leaving his son to a life of hardship. Evelyn's words rang in his mind too. He just doesn't understand that some things matter more than money. But he did understand. Somewhere inside, he'd always understood, choosing to bury it under figures, targets and bottom lines, until his daughter, his brave, caring daughter, had unknowingly brought him back to it. Christopher watched Jesse vanish around a corner, Thomas's warm smile almost lingering in the crisp fall air. 25 years ago, he'd had a choice to make, and this time, staying silent was no longer an option. The only question was, what would breaking his silence cost him? And was he truly ready to pay that price? Just then, his phone buzzed with notifications, a reminder about the upcoming board meeting, a merger proposal, and another message from Evelyn's school about a meeting request. He squared his shoulders, determination solidifying within him. It was time to stop simply managing his company and begin truly leading, not just in the office but at home, even if it meant confronting truths he'd avoided for years. With one last glance at the park bench where his daughter and, he was sure now, his nephew had been, he headed back, preparations for Thursday already forming in his mind. The folder sat ominously on his desk, a testament to 3 days of exhaustive investigation, its contents confirming his deepest fears. With shaky hands, he traced the headline, "Taxi driver, dies in late-night collision. Thomas Chang, age 42. Chang, not Lindsay's. Thomas had taken on a new name, distancing himself from the family's legacy. Christopher's eyes stung as he continued reading. The crash had occurred mere blocks from Lindsay's tower on a rain-soaked night while Thomas pulled a double shift. The official report blamed low visibility and brake failure, but it was the next document that made Christopher's heart freeze. It was a solitary application from 6 months before the accident, with a few desperate words scribbled in his brother's familiar handwriting. Previous employment terminated due to corporate restructuring, Lindsay's Corp's acquisition of Right Tech. Christopher remembered that acquisition. The business press had celebrated it as a brilliant strategic move. No one had mentioned the impact on employees or told him one of those faceless workers was his own brother. A gentle knock broke through his thoughts. "Mr. Lindsay's, your daughter is here." Evelyn stood in the doorway, a mix of defiance and uncertainty on her face. She'd never been called to his office before, and Christopher could see his curious employees subtly watching from behind her. "Come in, Evelyn," he said, closing the folder as she stepped in. But she caught a glimpse of Jesse's school photo paper clipped to the front. "You've been investigating him." Her voice shook with anger. "How could you? He's just a kid trying to..." "He's your cousin," Christopher said softly, cutting her off. Evelyn froze, the arguments she had prepared falling away. "What?" she whispered. "Jesse is Thomas's son, my brother's child," Christopher's voice cracked. "Your uncle's boy." Evelyn sank into the chair across from him, her face pale. "But how? Why didn't you tell me I had an uncle? Why are they living that way if we're family?" "Because I let them down," Christopher replied, walking to the window. The view that had once made him proud now seemed almost mocking. "I failed Thomas 25 years ago, and I've been failing his son ever since." He explained it all, the family divide, Thomas's unwavering principles, and his own weak silence. Evelyn listened, tears streaming down her face as the story unfolded. "The night he left," Christopher continued, "he wanted to meet me. He wanted to start his own company, to do things the right way. He even asked me to join him. I had the check ready to go, but our father found out, and I chose security over standing by my own brother." "Did you ever try to find him?" she asked quietly. "Not really. He changed his name, moved around, or maybe I just didn't try hard enough because I was ashamed." Christopher reached into his desk and pulled out a torn photograph. "This was the last picture of us together." Evelyn reached for it, her hands shaking. "Jesse keeps the other half in a frame beside his bed. He told me it's a photo of his father with his best friend." The silence that settled after was nearly unbearable. "There's more," Christopher finally said, opening the folder again. "The accident that killed Thomas. It wasn't just some unlucky turn of events. Our company's acquisition pushed him into that taxi job. He worked double shifts to cover his wife's medical needs during her pregnancy. She died giving birth to Jesse, leaving him and his mother-in-law buried in medical debt." Evelyn's expression hardened. "So, our success, our comfortable lifestyle, it's built on their suffering." "Evelyn, no!" She stood up sharply. "All these years, you've taught me about business tactics and market trends, but you never taught me about responsibility or compassion." Her voice wavered. "Jesse studies by candlelight when they can't pay their electric bill. His grandmother skips meals so he can have school supplies. And we live in a penthouse with rooms we never even enter." "I'm trying to make it right," Christopher murmured. "How? By investigating them like they're suspects? By hiding in your office while they struggle?" Evelyn's words were piercing. "Do you know what Jesse told me about his dad? He said his father was the most honest man he knew, that he chose to drive a taxi rather than betray his own values." She straightened, a look that reminded Christopher of her mother. "I used to wonder why you never talked about your family. Now I know. You're ashamed, not of them, but of yourself." The weight of her words struck him like a blow, but before he could respond, his intercom buzzed. "Mr. Lindsay's? The board is waiting in the conference room. Tell them—" "No." Evelyn's voice was resolute. "Go to your meeting. Talk about stocks, mergers and deals. I'm going to help my cousin with his homework and figure out how to tell him that his wealthy uncle has known about him for days, but was too busy with business to say hello." She moved to leave but paused at the door. "Mum always said that wealth reveals who you are by what you choose to do with it. So, what does our wealth say about us, Dad?" The door closed softly behind her, the sound more painful than a loud slam. Christopher sank heavily into his chair, staring at the accident report, the loan application, the photograph. His phone buzzed with meeting reminders, but he couldn't move. All he could see was Thomas's smile in Jesse's face, and he could still hear his brother's last words, now echoing in his daughter's painful accusations. 25 years of misguided decisions weighed heavily on him. The intercom buzzed once more. "Mr. Lindsay's, the board's getting restless." Christopher glanced around at his empire, a skyline of gleaming glass and steel, propped up by concessions and concealed truths. His gaze shifted to an old photo of two idealistic young men who had once believed they could change the world without sacrificing their integrity. He pressed the intercom button. "Tell them I have something more important than profit to attend to." It was time to create a legacy of a different kind. If this story of family bonds and hidden truths strikes a chord with you, consider subscribing to our channel. Your support allows us to bring more heartfelt stories like Christopher and Jesse's journey to light. The hallways of Hawthorne Academy seemed longer than ever as Evelyn walked past her whispering classmates. Her phone kept buzzing with updates about her father's unexpected absence from yesterday's board meeting. The business media was in a frenzy, and her so-called friends couldn't stop chrising her with questions. "Miss Lindsay's?" her economics teacher called as she tried to slip into her seat. "Care to share your thoughts on today's headlines about Lindsay's Corp's stock dip?" Evelyn felt the weight of every gaze in the room. On her desk, a Wall Street Journal headline blared, "Lindsay's Corp. CEO's mysterious absence raises market concerns." "I think," she replied carefully, "that some things matter more than stock prices." Across town, in a small classroom at Public School 183, Jesse was staring at his math test, the numbers blurring as exhaustion set in. He'd been up all night again, this time because his grandmother's cough had worsened. The waiting room of the free clinic had become their second home. "Time's up," his teacher announced. Jesse looked down at his unfinished test, feeling defeated. Math had always been his strong suit, the subject that could earn him a scholarship. Meanwhile, in the Lindsay's Tower boardroom, Christopher faced his own reckoning. "This is unheard of, Christopher," Vincent Matthews, the lead director, said, pacing back and forth. "You've missed 2 essential meetings. The Jenkins merger is barely hanging on, and now you're calling for a full audit of all acquisitions from the past 25 years. Christopher gazed out the window, watching as a taxi weaved through the city streets below. The memory hit him suddenly. How many people lost their jobs after the right tech takeover? That was years ago. What's that got to do with now? He wondered. How many jobs? He pressed. Around 300, another board member answered. It was essential for streamlining operations. 300 lives upended. Christopher turned to confront the room. One of those people was my brother. The silence in the room became thick. Your brother? Vincent's face drained of color. Thomas. But he didn't disappear. Christopher's tone was firm. He stood against our father's cutthroat ways, and I chose to support the wrong side. Years later, when our acquisition happened, it left him driving a taxi at night just to cover his wife's medical bills. He died in an accident 2 years ago, leaving his son struggling to afford basic school supplies while my daughter attends Hawthorne Academy. The boardroom burst into heated debate, but Christopher was elsewhere. He thought about the meeting he'd arranged for that afternoon. He'd asked Evelyn to bring Jesse and his grandmother to his house. It was time for honesty, for family, for reparation. His phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. Grands is in the hospital. Jesse collapsed at school. He was on his way within moments. Bursting into the emergency room minutes later, he spotted Evelyn pacing in her school uniform. Where are they? He asked. Grands is getting tests, she replied. Jesse's with the school nurse. He fainted during a math test. Exhaustion, they think, her voice wavered. He's been up all night helping her. They couldn't afford her medication refill and her cough got worse. A nurse approached. Mr. Lindsay's? Mrs. Chang is asking for you. Christopher stepped into her hospital room and found a dignified elderly woman, worn but strong. Her gaze met his, sharp and knowing. So, she said softly, you finally found them. Christopher sat down beside her. "You knew who I was. Thomas kept a picture of you. Told Jesse it was his father's closest friend." She coughed, a painful sound. "He never stopped loving you, even after everything." The words felt like a punch. "I'm so sorry. I should have—" "Save your apologies," she interrupted. "Thomas forgave you a long time ago. The real question was, can you forgive yourself?" Just as Christopher was about to answer, a sudden noise came from the doorway. There stood Jesse, visibly shaken, staring straight at Christopher, with a gaze eerily reminiscent of Thomas's. "It's you," Jesse said, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and accusation. "From the photograph, the one of Dad's brother." His tone, so similar to Thomas's, hit Christopher hard, leaving him momentarily speechless. "Jesse, Christopher began, but Jesse's simple, painfully raw question interrupted him. "Why now? Why didn't you come when Dad died? When Mom passed away? When we needed you?" Evelyn took a cautious step forward, but Jesse's voice rose, silencing her. "Do you have any idea what it's like to watch your grandmother go without food just so you can eat? Studying in the dark because the power got cut off? Knowing Dad worked himself to exhaustion to keep the lights on?" Tears streamed down his face as he asked, "Where were you?" Christopher reached out, but Jesse stepped back, his voice filled with bitterness. "I was wrong," he whispered, almost to himself. "I thought when Evelyn first helped me, maybe rich folks had a heart. Maybe they cared. But you're all the same, only around when it suits you." With that, he turned and ran, ignoring Evelyn's calls behind him. Christopher stood there, paralyzed, his brother's words from long ago echoing in his mind. "Some things are worth more than money, Chris. One day you'll realize that." "Go after him." Mrs. Chang's voice, though soft, carried undeniable strength. "Don't make the same mistake again." Christopher hurried after him, eventually finding Jesse sitting in the hospital chapel. Christopher's voice, filled with raw emotion, broke the silence. "Your father. He was the bravest man I've ever known. He fought for what was right, even when I couldn't, even when I wouldn't." Jesse didn't respond, but finally lifted his gaze. "He said that about you too, that you were the brave one," he murmured. But he was wrong. With a shaky voice, Christopher confessed, "I was a coward. I put wealth before family, security before values, and I've regretted it every single day." Jesse turned toward him at last. "We can't undo the past," he said quietly. "No," Christopher agreed, "but we can shape what comes next, if you'll give me a chance." Outside, Evelyn watched the exchange through the chapel glass, a mix of hope and fear filling her heart. Her phone buzzed with more news notifications about the Lindsay's Corp stock plummeting. The annual charity gala, usually the highlight of New York's social calendar, carried a somber tone that night as crystal chandeliers in the plaza's grand ballroom seemed to cast more shadows than sparkle. Christopher adjusted his tie, catching glimpses of the city's elite mingling around him, their polished smiles barely hiding their curiosity over his recent unpredictable behavior. "Your father's lost his mind," one board member murmured to Evelyn, holding up the Jenkins merger, ordering audits, talking about corporate responsibility. "Stocks have dropped 15%. Wearing a striking blue dress, the same shade as her mother's eyes, Evelyn lifted her chin. "Maybe he's finally found his conscience." The murmurs only grew when Jesse entered the room with his grandmother. Both of them appeared out of place in their new formal wear, but Christopher had insisted they come. "Family belongs at family gatherings," he had said, leaving no room for argument. The evening might have carried on with just minor discomfort had it not been for Vincent Martinez and his overindulgence in champagne. Swaying slightly, he approached Jessie by the dessert table, his voice loudly cutting through the room. "You're the charity case stirring up all the trouble. The cab driver's son." The room didn't go completely silent, but the chatter dimmed as Jessie squared his shoulders, looking so much like Thomas that it made Christopher's heart ache. "My father," Jessie said steadily, "was a man of principles." Martinez sneered. "Principles don't pay dividends, kid. Your father was a fool who died because of this company's actions," Evelyn's voice interrupted sharply. She stood on the small stage, about to present the annual scholarship awards, and her words sliced through the room's tension. "Would you all like to know the truth about how Lindsay's Corp's strategic acquisitions ruin lives?" "Evelyn," Christopher warned, but she was undeterred. "My uncle." "Yes, uncle, worked for Right Tech when Lindsay's Corp took over. He lost everything. He became a cab driver to pay for his pregnant wife's medical care, working double shifts because the insurance Lindsay's Corp slashed would have covered her high-risk pregnancy. He died in an accident after those long hours, and his wife died giving birth to their son, my cousin Jesse, the boy you're all gossiping about. He studies by candlelight and still keeps straight A's. His grandmother goes hungry to make sure he eats. And here we are, dressed to the nines, paying thousands of dollars per plate, applauding ourselves for being charitable." The silence was complete. Jesse stood motionless, tears streaming down his face. His grandmother's hand clutched his shoulder, her face a blend of pride and worry. "Evelyn, that's enough," Christopher said, stepping closer to the stage. But Evelyn wasn't finished. "You want to know why Lindsay's Corp's stock is falling? Because my father finally realized what his brother had known all along, that some things are more important than money, that every big acquisition comes with a human cost." A loud crash from the dessert table interrupted her, and everyone turned to see Jesse had fallen and brought a stack of champagne glasses down with him. "Jesse!" His grandmother's voice was a piercing cry. "His heart! He needs his medication!" Christopher was the first to reach him, supporting Jesse's head. "Where's his medicine?" he demanded. "We couldn't afford the refill," she sobbed. "Insurance denied it again." The bitter irony hit Christopher hard. His own company's health policies, crafted to boost profit, were now endangering his nephew's life. "Call an ambulance," someone shouted. "No time," Christopher responded, scooping Jesse up. "My car's outside. Evelyn, help Mrs. Chang." Red light flashes and silent prayers blurred the ride to the hospital. In the back seat, Mrs. Chang whispered traditional prayers, while Evelyn gripped Jesse's hand, urging him, "Stay with us, Jesse. We can't lose you. Not now." The emergency room was a storm of noise and movement. For once, Christopher's wealth and influence meant nothing against the urgent reality of medical care as they waited, powerless, while doctors raced to stabilize Jesse. Much later, a nurse approached Christopher. "Mr. Lindsay's, your nephew is stable. The doctor would like to speak with you." The conversation that followed was a blow. Jesse had a congenital heart condition, manageable with medication, but potentially fatal without it, the same condition that had claimed his mother during childbirth. "He'll need consistent care," the doctor said, "regular medication and monitoring." Christopher replied firmly, "He'll have everything he needs." Christopher's voice was firm and unwavering as he asked, "What is it, Mrs. Chang?" She turned to him, her gaze softened with years of wisdom, her formal attire lending her an unexpected fragility. She whispered, "There's something you should see," and handed him an aging envelope. Inside was a letter, dated just before the tragedy. "Dear Chris, if you're reading this, it means something happened to me. I asked Mrs. Chang to give you this letter if you ever found our son. I named him Jesse Christopher Chang. Yes, after you. Because, despite everything, you're still my brother. I never stopped hoping you'd someday understand what truly matters. I don't blame you for the past. We all have choices we must live with. But now, I'm asking one last favor. If anything happens to me, find Jesse. Don't give him wealth. We could have used it, sure, but give him a family. Show him that principles and success don't have to clash. Teach him what I tried to teach you long ago, that some things go beyond money. Love matters, family matters, and doing what's right matters. I forgive you. Maybe one day you'll forgive yourself too. Thomas. Christopher's hands shook as he held the letter. Through the hospital room window, he saw Evelyn seated by Jesse's bedside, holding his hand, her elegant dress wrinkled and streaked with tear stains. His phone buzzed urgently, messages from the board, from shareholders, from legal advisors threatening lawsuits over recent decisions. But Christopher Lindsay's, who had spent a lifetime fortifying walls of wealth and influence, now felt them weaken in the light of his brother's forgiveness. "Enough," he whispered, his voice growing stronger. "Enough." He looked around at Mrs. Chang, at Evelyn, and at Jesse's pale face on the hospital pillow. 25 years of misplaced priorities had led to this moment, but Thomas had never stopped believing in him, had even named his son after him, trusting that one day Christopher would realize what truly mattered. It was time to prove Thomas right. The board would resist, shareholders would push back, and his empire could falter. But watching his daughter care for his nephew with fierce devotion, he knew his decision was made. As Christopher scanned the morning headlines splashed across every major business outlet, he realized Thomas had foreseen this moment long before. Lindsay's Corp CEO reveals dramatic restructuring plan, read one of the bold titles. Sitting in his home office, the sunrise cast a warm glow over Manhattan, contrasting the storm brewing in the media. Calls had flooded his phone ever since yesterday's press conference, where he had confidently laid out sweeping changes that jolted Wall Street. "Effective immediately," he'd stated firmly under the glare of camera flashes. Lindsay's corporation will implement an employee protection program for every acquisition. No more mass layoffs, no more benefit cuts. He'd announced a $500 million fund dedicated to supporting displaced workers and their families. The company's stock took an immediate hit, and major shareholders quickly raised the threat of legal action. Yet, for the first time in years, Christopher found true peace that night. Meanwhile, Jesse was recuperating at home, not in the cramped apartment he once knew, but in a spacious room within Christopher's penthouse. A detailed schedule of his medications was posted prominently on the fridge, right next to Evelyn's debate team practice times and Mrs. Chang's medical appointments. "Dad?" Evelyn's voice pulled him back to the moment as she appeared, already dressed for school. "Jesse wants to see you." Christopher found his nephew propped up in bed, holding Thomas's old letter. Despite his lingering paleness, Jesse looked noticeably stronger. "Uncle Chris, is it true what they're saying on the news? About the changes you're making at the company?" "It's true," Christopher replied, sitting on the bed beside him. "We're doing things differently now. Your dad always believed there was a better way, and it's time we pursue it." Jesse's fingers traced his father's signature on the letter. "They're saying you might lose everything," he murmured. Christopher smiled. "Not everything. At least not what matters most." Just then, a gentle knock on the door broke the quiet moment. Mrs. Chang entered with a tray of traditional Chinese herbal remedies. "Time for medicine," she announced with a warm smile, bringing both a modern and traditional approach, just like Thomas used to say, "Belt and suspenders." The familiar phrase drew smiles all around, infusing a comforting sense of continuity into their day. Moments later, Mr. Lindsay's, their housekeeper, appeared at the doorway. "The board members are here, Mr. Lindsay's." With a nod, Christopher turned to Evelyn. "Stay with Jessie." "Mrs. Chang, would you care to join me?" Christopher asked. She nodded, understanding the moment's weight. Together, they walked down to meet the storm awaiting them in the living room, where board members were already seated in their high-end suits, a stark contrast to the family photos now taking center stage, including a newly restored version of an old, torn picture. "This is insanity," began Christopher Vincent Martinez, his voice filled with disdain. Christopher cut him off. "For years, the shareholders have seen remarkable profits, but it's come at a significant human cost. That stops today." "You're suggesting we sacrifice billions in value," Martinez protested. "No, I'm proposing we build true value. Value that lasts, the kind my brother believed in." Martinez sneered. "Your brother? The cab driver?" Mrs. Chang took a step forward, her slight frame somehow commanding the room. "My son-in-law lost his life because of choices made in your boardroom, and my grandson nearly did too. How many other families have suffered because of your greed?" The room fell silent as her words sank in. Christopher continued, steady but resolute. "The new policies will stand. We're establishing the Thomas Lindsay's Foundation for Ethical Business, and every acquisition will come with comprehensive employee support. We'll also fund scholarships for disadvantaged students." "This board won't let you," someone warned. "Then prepare for a fight," Christopher replied, his gaze unyielding, "because every document will become public. Every decision, every impact we've had on people's lives. Are you ready for that scrutiny?" The threat loomed in the air. Christopher held knowledge that could dismantle careers, and the board members knew it. But he extended a final olive branch. "Or you could join me. Be part of the solution. Show Wall Street that profit and principle can thrive together." Upstairs, Evelyn and Jessie listened through the vent, an old trick Evelyn had discovered years ago. "Dad's really doing this," Jessie whispered, awestruck. "He's risking everything." "No," Evelyn smiled. "He's finally standing up for what matters." The argument below raged on, but the atmosphere was changing as some of the board members began to see the potential in this new direction. The public image boost, the advantage of being a pioneer in ethical business practices, and the possibility of reaching new markets were all within reach. By nightfall, an agreement had been made. Changes would roll out, though at a slower pace than Christopher had initially envisioned. With the support of both corporate funding and already committed private contributions, the Thomas Lindsay's Foundation would indeed come to life. The family gathered that evening for dinner, which was very different from the elaborate dinners Christopher had previously experienced. Mrs. Chang prepared a simple meal. "I have something for you," Christopher said to Jessie, handing him an envelope. Inside were the enrollment papers for Hawthorne Academy. "Only if you want to. Your father believed in public schools, and if that's your choice." "Dad would want me to make the most of every opportunity," Jessie replied quietly, "as long as I use it to help others." Later, Evelyn gently squeezed her cousin's hand. "We'll do it together," she assured him. Mrs. Chang watched with misty eyes. "Thomas would be proud of all of you." Christopher took in the scene, his daughter's empathetic courage, his nephew's calm strength, Mrs. Chang's quiet resilience. The market would recover or not, the company would adapt or not, but this moment of family healing was priceless, beyond anything he'd ever earned. "To new beginnings," he toasted, "and to remembering what really counts." The others joined him, their glasses glinting in the fading light. Outside, the city's pulse continued, oblivious to the transformation occurring in one high-rise apartment. A small miracle of redemption. The road ahead wouldn't be smooth. There would be legal fights, business obstacles, and personal adjustments. But for the first time since Thomas had left all those years back, Christopher felt truly wealthy, rich in the things money could never buy. Some sacrifices were worth the cost, some setbacks were hidden blessings, and sometimes it takes losing everything to finally find what you didn't realize was missing. After watching Christopher's inspiring journey toward redemption and his mission to reshape his company for a greater good. If this story has moved you, please take a moment to support our channel. Hit subscribe to join our community of storytellers and hope bringers. Every like, share, and comment helps spread these messages of love, family, and redemption to a wider audience. 6 months after Christopher's shocking announcement, the struggle shifted from boardroom battles to courtroom clashes. 3 separate lawsuits from shareholders now called for his ousting as CEO, while the business press swung between labeling him a visionary reformer and a misguided destroyer of value. Lindsay's Corp faces $2 billion in market losses, the Wall Street Journal headlined. Christopher set the paper aside, focusing instead on a framed photo displayed prominently on his desk. Thomas's grin was a mirror of Jesse's, captured in the moment when his son accepted his Academic Excellence Award at Hawthorne Academy. "Mr. Lindsay's," his assistant's voice crackled over the intercom. "The lawyers are here." The meeting that followed was bleak. "They're claiming breach of fiduciary duty," his lead counsel explained. "The Jenkins merger failure alone cost shareholders hundreds of millions. The new employee protection initiatives are eating into profits. They want you out." Christopher replied calmly, "Let them try." Though later, alone in his office, the weight of the fight settled over him. The company's stock had stabilized, but at a lower level, and old friends no longer returned his calls. Former allies murmured about breakdowns and unresolved guilt. His phone buzzed, a message from Evelyn. "Emergency at school? Come quick." Christopher's heart sank as he hurried to Hawthorne Academy. The past 6 months had taken their toll on the kids. Although many students welcomed Jesse, some were less understanding, particularly those whose families had suffered because of Lindsay's Corp's decline. He found his children in the headmaster's office. Jesse sat with an ice pack pressed against his jaw, while Evelyn stood protectively by his side. Across the room, another boy with a bloody nose stared at them in anger. "He called Jesse a charity case," Evelyn said, her voice trembling with fury. "He said we were the reason his family lost money in Lindsay's Corp stocks. So I hit him." "After I hit him first," Jesse added softly, looking down. The headmaster shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Lindsay's," Christopher interjected, "is that my nephew and daughter defended our family's name." "I hope that still holds some value at Hawthorne Academy." Later, on the drive home, Jesse finally broke the silence. "I'm sorry, Uncle Chris. I know that me fighting only adds more challenges for you." "Never apologize for standing up for what's right," Christopher reassured him. "Your father taught me that, though it took me a long time to truly understand it." Back at home, they found Mrs. Chang in the kitchen with Mary, their new housekeeper, cooking up a storm. The scent of ginger and garlic filled the room, a mix of cultures that had quickly become their usual. "Rough day?" Mrs. Chang asked, noticing their expressions. "Getting better," Christopher replied with a warm smile, reaching for an apron. He found unexpected peace in these simple moments, learning to cook traditional Chinese dishes alongside his growing family. The doorbell interrupted their cooking lesson. Evelyn opened it to reveal Vincent Martinez, visibly uneasy in their informal setting. "Christopher," he called, "need to speak privately." But Christopher remained at the counter, hands covered in flour. "Whatever you have to say, you can say it in front of my family." Martinez sighed, shifting on his feet. "The opposition's gaining momentum. They're digging up old acquisitions, looking for patterns of hostile takeovers and displaced workers. It's not just recent choices they're after. They're set on unearthing it all. Let them, Christopher replied calmly, as he showed Jesse how to knead dough properly. You don't understand, he said firmly. I've seen the files. They uncovered everything. Your father's practices, Christopher. Legal boundaries were crossed. If this goes public... His words trailed off, leaving the room heavy with tension. Even Mary paused mid-chop, her knife hovering above the vegetables. How many families? Christopher's voice was barely a whisper. Martinez hesitated, avoiding eye contact. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Jesse's hands froze in the dough, and Evelyn's face drained of color. Mrs. Chang mumbled a soft prayer in Chinese. Christopher's gaze hardened. Then it's time the truth came out. All of it. He looked around, resolute. Some of the board, maybe even I, might end up paying a steep price. But some things are worth it. Martinez looked stunned. You'd risk everything. Your freedom, your family's future. Evelyn stepped forward, her voice unwavering. He's protecting our family's future, the real kind, built on honesty and justice, not deceit and harm. Jesse joined her, his voice raw. My father lost his life to those lies. How many others? How many families? Martinez glanced around the Kit Chang, the aroma of half-prepared dinner, flour-dusted countertops where the CEO taught his nephew how to bake. His expression shifted, softening. What do you need from me? He asked finally. Help me make things right, Christopher answered firmly. All of it, no matter the cost. Late that night, when the others had gone to bed, Christopher sat alone in his study. He wasn't drafting business plans or legal defenses, but instead writing letters. Letters addressed to every family they could trace, each one containing both an apology and a pledge to make amends. Each letter was signed by his own hand. Evelyn found him there at midnight. Dad, what are you doing? Writing to Thomas, he replied, showing her the letter. He can't read it, I know, but he deserves to know what his sacrifice has inspired, how his beliefs are finally finding a place here. Evelyn embraced him, smudging flour onto her pajamas. He knows, Dad. Wherever he is, he knows. Outside, the city lights sparkled like distant stars. Somewhere, families were hurting, struggling, and losing hope. But change was on the way. One letter, one truth, one act of justice at a time. The storm was far from over, and the hardest battles still lay ahead. But in the peaceful silence of that midnight moment, with his daughter's arms around him and his brother's memory close to his heart, Christopher Lindsay's felt a profound wealth, a kind that could only be called peace. The document lay on Christopher's desk, as heavy as a bomb ready to explode. An internal memo, dated a quarter-century ago and unmistakably penned in his father's terse handwriting, read, T. Lindsay's receives no severance. Make an example. No one defies the family. Christopher's hand trembled as he looked up. Where did you uncover this? He asked Martinez, who stood solemnly by the rain-speckled window. In an old storage unit, buried files. And there's more, Martinez replied, laying down a second folder. The brakes failing on Thomas's taxi. It wasn't a coincidence. Someone wanted him silenced. He was digging, building a case against the company's practices. Christopher felt his world shift. Who? He demanded. Your father, Martinez said, struggling to meet his gaze. He had a shadow team off the record to handle threats against the company. We all knew some things, but nothing like this kind of orchestrated. Suddenly the door swung open and Evelyn stormed in, her face streaked with tears. Dad, Jesse's gone, she cried. He found files about his dad's accident. He left this, she said, handing him a hastily scrawled note. I need to know the truth. Don't try to find me. Christopher felt a chill. A 16-year-old, armed with explosive information, loose in a city that now felt vast and threatening. "Activate full security. Get everyone on this," he ordered. But Evelyn grabbed his arm. "Wait. I think I know where he'd go." Half an hour later, their car skidded to a stop outside the deserted Wright Tech building, awaiting demolition. Through the rain-streaked windows, they spotted a flashlight flickering inside. "Let me go in first," Evelyn whispered. "He'll listen to me." Christopher watched her slip into the abandoned building, his heart pounding. Beside him, Martinez shifted uneasily. "Christopher, if this leaks—" Christopher's voice turned cold. "Then my father murdered my brother. Everything else is just details." Inside, Evelyn found Jesse in what used to be Thomas's office. He was sitting on the dusty floor, old photos and employee records scattered around him. "He was building a case," Jesse muttered, not looking up. "All these families, all these lives. He was going to expose it all. They killed him for it. Your grandfather gave the order." Evelyn sat beside him. "We're going to set things right, Jesse. But we won't do it alone." He finally looked at her, eyes filled with anguish. "Your grandfather murdered my father, and now my dad's trying to fix it. Not just for my dad, but for everyone hurt." Evelyn reached for his hand. "We can't change what happened, but we can fight for justice. The right way." "What's the right way, Evelyn? The whole system is corrupt." "We change the system," came Christopher's voice from the doorway. Jesse flinched, but didn't pull away as Christopher approached and sat next to them. "Your dad was right," Christopher said quietly. "The corruption, the cover-ups, the cost. He died trying to expose it all." He pulled out the old photograph that had set everything in motion. "Let's finish what he started. I'm calling a press conference tomorrow. We're laying everything out, all the past wrongs, the cover-ups, even the murder." His voice faltered, then steadied. "But we're also introducing a new path forward, the Thomas Lindsay's way." "They'll ruin you," Jesse murmured. "Let them try. Some truths are worth any cost." Evelyn squeezed Jesse's hand, her grip steady. "We're family. Whatever happens, we're in this together." As dawn crept in, they gathered in Christopher's office, gearing up for what lay ahead. The press conference was set for noon. Jesse had spent hours perfecting the presentation, his father's legacy echoing in his drive to reveal the truth. Mr. Lindsay's assistant entered quietly. "They're ready for you." Christopher looked around at his family, Evelyn's fierce determination, Jesse's calm steadiness, Mrs. Chang's quiet dignity. Even Matthew had come around, prepared to share his own part in the past and his commitment to change. "Remember," Christopher reminded them, "your father died standing up for the truth. Today, we're honoring that fight." Camera flashes greeted them as they walked into the conference room, Christopher at the forefront with his family standing firm by his side. Change was coming, and justice would be served. Some prices are worth paying. Some truths demand to be told. And some legacies are born not from riches, but from the bravery to stand for what's right. As Christopher began his address, he felt his brother Thomas's presence in Jesse's determined stance, in Evelyn's unwavering support, and in the truth finally emerging into the light. 25 years ago, Christopher began, my brother tried to bring a truth forward, a truth that cost him his life. Today, we're finishing what he began. The storm had arrived, but this time they were ready to face it. Together. 3 months after the explosive conference, the Lindsay's Corp building bore a new name, the Thomas Lindsay's Center for Business Ethics. The transformation wasn't just in name. Real change was happening from the inside out. Christopher watched from the lobby as workers installed a bronze plaque. The media backlash had been brutal, but truth had become a powerful ally. Former employees came forward, new documents were revealed, and the old order collapsed under the weight of undeniable evidence. "The installation is almost done," Evelyn remarked, joining him. She appeared more poised at 17, thanks to the difficulties of the previous year. "What do you think your father would say?" Christopher asked Jessie, who stood admiring the plaque. Its inscription read, "In memory of Thomas Lindsay's, who gave his life for ethical business practices. His sacrifice ignited a revolution in corporate responsibility." Jessie smiled. He'd principally say it's a bit much. He always believed that real transformation happens in the quiet, everyday choices we make. The lobby buzzed with excitement as people gathered for the main event of the day, the unveiling of the Thomas Lindsay's Foundation's flagship initiative. Mrs. Chang, dressed elegantly in a traditional Chinese gown, warmly welcomed former Right Tech employees and their families, many of whom had channeled their past hardships into a new purpose, driving the Foundation's mission forward. Mr. Lindsay's Martinez arrived, looking more at ease than he had in a long time. While prison awaited some former board members, his testimony had set him on a different path. Now, he was working with the Foundation to support families affected by past corporate actions. "They're ready for you upstairs," a staff member informed him. The conference room was filled with both familiar and unfamiliar faces. Christopher recognized many from the files Thomas had left behind, families whose lives had been impacted by corporate greed, now allies in building something better. "Welcome," Christopher began, his voice steady and resonant. "A year ago, my nephew entered my life, forcing me to confront some hard truths. Today we take another step in honoring Thomas's legacy." He presented the Foundation's initial initiatives, including a thorough support system for displaced workers, educational scholarships, small business grants, and a corporate ethics oversight system that other businesses have already embraced. But perhaps most importantly, he announced, "We're launching the Thomas Lindsay's Whistleblower Protection Fund. No one should ever have to choose between doing the right thing and feeling secure." Applause filled the room, but it was Jessie's next words that brought emotion to many. "My father always said that business without humanity is just a form of organized greed." He spoke with growing confidence. "This foundation exists to bring humanity back to business, not as an afterthought, but as a core value." Evelyn then outlined the ambitious goals for the Foundation's first year, assisting 20,000 families, saving 100 small businesses, and awarding 500 scholarships. The goals were bold, but supported by Lindsay's Corp resources and a growing coalition of corporate partners who recognized the business value in ethical conduct. "The old way of doing business is on its way out," Christopher concluded. "Together, we're building something new, something worthy of Thomas's sacrifice." Later, in a quieter moment, the family gathered in Thomas's old office at Right Tech. Christopher had bought the building, not for demolition, but to transform it into the Foundation's permanent headquarters. "I found something today," Mrs. Chang said, pulling out a worn notebook, Thomas's journal from his final months. They sat close together as Jessie read his father's words aloud. "Chris will understand someday. The walls we build with wealth can turn into our own prisons. True freedom comes from doing what's right, no matter the cost. Jessie should know this. Someone needs to show him that a true legacy isn't measured in dollar signs." Evelyn squeezed her cousin's hand as his voice trembled. "He'd be so proud of you, of all of us." Martinez joined them, reporting, "The Foundation just approved another 100 grants today, small businesses that would have been swept away by the old system. They're already calling it the Thomas Lindsay's effect, building prosperity through ethical choices." Christopher touched the journal, feeling a sense of confirmation. He knew, even back then, he said. They glanced out at the city skyline, watching the Lindsay's Tower stand strong but change, a beacon of transformation rather than just a symbol of wealth. Uncle Chris, Jesse's tone was contemplative. "I've been thinking about college. Harvard Business School is still interested, but I want to take it further, do business and law school. Dad fought with truth and principles, and I want to carry those with the law on my side." Evelyn grinned. "Look out, corporate world. The next generation of Lindsays is here." "Chang Lindsays," Jesse corrected, a hint of his father's smile lighting his face. Mrs. Chang, watching them, smiled with a glimmer in her eyes. "Thomas always used to say that real wealth lies in the lives you impact, not the money you accumulate." "He was right," Christopher said quietly. Outside, the last rays of sunlight gleamed off the plaque bearing Thomas's name, a promise kept, marking the close of the old way of business and the start of a new era. Somewhere, Christopher knew, his brother was smiling. When success feels hollow and wealth becomes a gilded cage, remember that the truest riches are found not in vaults, but in the lives we touch and the hearts we warm. Many of us, like Christopher, build walls of success only to find ourselves isolated, cut off from what truly matters. But it's never too late to choose a different path. Love over power, honesty over convenience, and family over wealth. Through the journey of Jesse and Evelyn, we learn that the purest wealth is found in forgiveness, healing, and rebuilding. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, can spark a revolution of the heart. Every decision to do right, despite the sacrifice, plants seeds of hope that grow into a forest of change. Your legacy isn't measured in money, but in the joy you bring, the tears you comfort, and the lives you uplift. Like Thomas, your values and love can reverberate across generations, inspiring others to follow their moral compass. In the end, it's not about the empire you build, but about the hearts you touch, the bridges you restore, and the love you leave as a legacy. Right now, you have the ability to choose what truly matters, to reach out to those you've wronged, to mend what's been broken, to choose love instead of fear. Your heart knows the way, and as Christopher discovered, when you finally bring your actions in line with your deepest values, you unlock a wealth that no market fall can take from you, a priceless treasure of a life filled with love, purpose, and the joy of making a difference. Let your heart be your guide. Some sacrifices are worth making, some risks worth taking if they lead us back to love, back to family, back to what truly counts. In the end, the only wealth that holds real value is the love we've shared and the lives we've touched. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to our channel, sharing it with your loved ones, and hitting that like button. Your support means everything. Leave a comment below and tell us how this story of family and redemption moved you. Together, let's keep spreading inspiring stories of love, hope, and the power of family.